Right. Well, let's get going. Welcome everybody. It's great to have so many people on our first webinar of 2021. Happy New Year to you all. Hope you've had a good time. For those of you that haven't watched these before, it's a pretty simple formula. We get somebody that's done something interesting and inspiring to give a talk, and we record these and put them onto our talks page. So if you want to watch this again or share it with family or friends, it's very easy to find. And we've got a great series of speakers this year. Have a look at the talks page, and that there's Ben is going to be amazing, and there's a series of other talks that are going to be just as amazing. And these are kind of word of mouth, and we hear about people that have done interesting things and just ask people to talk. So thank you to a good friend of mine, John Morgan, who put me in touch with Ben. Ben knows a bunch of other friends, some of whom are on this call. Part of what we do this for is actually raising money for the speaker's chosen charity. So I've put a link in the chat window, so would encourage everybody that can in the current climate to give generously. It's a fantastic cause. I'll let Ben talk a little bit about that as part of his speech. But that's it really. I just wanted to say a huge thanks to Ben, and I'll hand over to Ben.
Hi, thanks Ollie. Well, good evening everyone, and first of all, thanks ever so much for inviting me to speak. I feel very privileged, and this is a great initiative. I was totally unaware of it, but I see quite a few friends have talked in the past, and an amazing back catalogue, so thanks a lot, and I hope you enjoy this evening. I thought first of all, I'll just give you a little bit of a background about me. I've always loved being outside. My parents were reasonably keen hill walkers, so as children we were dragged out to the Lake District and North Wales where we lived fairly regularly, and it definitely rubbed off on me. I loved biking from an early age and would disappear off on little adventures unbeknownst to my parents at the age of 5 or 6 around the streets where we lived, and as I grew older went out with other friends and friends' fathers on bike rides and expeditions. And here we've got a picture of me. I got very into BMX at about the age of 11 or 12, and also did a bit of BMX racing, and around about the same time I got very keen on cross-country running, and managed to run for English schoolboys when I was 16. Ran for Lincoln City and Colleges. You can see the car there. It's quite a long time ago now. That must be 83, 84, I think. I think it's at Berry Hill Park, Mansfield. I was living in North Lincolnshire at the time, which is pretty flat. Yeah, I got into climbing when I went to university, and had various trips to the Alps. I'd always been obsessed with skiing, but actually hadn't really got to do much as a child, and started to go away. We went to Norway when I was about 20 with some buddies at university. We didn't know what we were doing. We had a great adventure. We took way too much kit and got caught in a storm in tents for several days, and good times, great memories. And yeah, about 15-20 years ago, I was very lucky to get on a sponsored adventure race team, and got to do 40 or so races overseas. This one's in Greenland, you can see just here, and had great times with some good friends. You probably recognize maybe on the right there Steve Birkinshaw and Tom Gibbs on the left, and got to race with some great people. A lot of my adult life has been fell running as well. I'm a member of Borrowdale Fell Runners, and which has given me great pleasure over the last 25 years. I'm 50 now, almost. I'm a veterinary surgeon for work, and I do love my adventures and time out. So this evening I'm going to chat about 3 different adventures, all very different in nature. The first one is skiing Mont Blanc in a day from Chamonix. The second is an adventure that I'm having year on year with 3 buddies, which is to try and ski the length of the Alps from the Mediterranean to Vienna. And the last one is an adventure I did last winter to ski the length of Norway. So it's been a long-held ambition of mine to ski from, or to set off from the church in Chamonix, go to the summit of Mont Blanc and back down to the church in a day. And it's not that easy a thing to do because the weather's pretty inclement up on the summit of Mont Blanc. Also, there's problems with where the seracs are on the north face, and you need good snow cover down at an area around here. You can maybe see the cursor. There's an area called the Junction where there's a lot of crevasses. So my route, we can see, is from the church. I ran up to, you can see the cursor there, yeah, and over to the Mont Blanc tunnel, and then we went up the Glacier de Bossons, and then through this heavily crevassed area up onto an arête. This is called the Arête Royale. A little bit of climbing on there, and then skis back on up to the summit, and then we skied quite an interesting route down the north face, and then I would have gone back down, but my buddies, unbeknownst to me, I don't know why, they didn't actually want to do the whole thing from the church. They just wanted to start at the tunnel and then catch the lift back down from here. So actually I skied across quite steep terrain in places, back to the lift, by which time it's quite late, and then skied porridge back down to the town of Chamonix and back to the church. So I think I set off at about 3:20 in the morning and met my buddies at the tunnel about an hour later. And there were 4 of us. One of the guys actually, he got cold. He went so far ahead. He had to descend during the day, rather unfortunately. But here we are, and I'm with two good friends. One guy called Ben Tibbetts, who you may have come across, who's a Chamonix guide now, and has written a great book called Alpine Glow to climbing the Alps 4,000 meter peaks. And the other guy on the right is Misha Gopal, who has a great app for phones called FatMap, a real entrepreneur. So here we are, we're going underneath an old lift up to the Aiguille du Midi. And then in this next shot just here, you can see this is where we hit this area called the Junction just here, which is heavily crevassed in summer. And we just had to climb up through here. And then you can see there are skin tracks up here. Other people have been up. And then we went across to this arête, up the arête and onto the Dom. And then it's still quite a lot further to the summit. So here we are on the summit. And you can probably tell by my demeanor, I'm there on the right, I was absolutely freezing. We went pretty skimpy on kit to travel quickly, and there is a hut, the Valo hut. I think it's at about 4,200 meters, but we had to stop there for about half an hour or so because my hands were so cold. But fortunately managed to warm up, and we did eventually get to the summit. We didn't hang around there long. It was pretty windy, and all we knew for getting down was we had to head to some rocks, which we managed to identify, and then work our way down the north face, which is an incredible place to be. It's one of those places, it's awe-inspiring because you're so small in this vast amphitheatre, and it's somewhere really you shouldn't be, because all these hanging seracs are incredibly dangerous and frequently release huge blocks of thousands of tons of ice. So quite an exciting feeling to be there, and it was a great adventure for us all, because none of us had done this route before, and indeed some years you can't do it because you can't get down through the seracs. And here we have another similar shot, similar place, just looking back up, and you can see it's pretty windy there, and very, very exciting. And here we are once we've got back down. You can see the route my cursor we took down. You come down here and then through, and then just sneak your way through here, and then down and through. And once you're where we are there, you're pretty safe. You can still see there is a bit of debris down there and a huge lump of ice just there, but heaved a bit of a sigh of relief to really be out of earshot of these huge seracs.
But Ben, just a quick question. How often does this get done, Mont Blanc, in a day from the church in Chamonix?
I don't think many people do it in a day. There's a near where you can see we are just there. There's a hut, and most people would catch the Midi Téléphérique up to the mid station and then go across to the hut on their first day, and then the second day they would go to the summit. And then they might, if they were a strong party, descend to the valley, or more likely they would stay a second night in the hut and then descend back down. So usually it would be a 3-day trip. The other way people ski Mont Blanc commonly is to catch the téléphérique to the summit of Mont Blanc and then go over Mont Blanc to Tackle and Mont Maudit, and then down. But no, I don't think it's very common for people to do it from the valley floor. But for me, it felt like a very pure and exciting adventure, and was richly fulfilling to do it. It was one of those great days out with great friends, great camaraderie, and had a lot of bonding experience, and just feel good factor about it, really. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So there I am back at the church, and I think the record, I think Kilian's record for it is, I don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 5.5 hours. I was out for a good 10 to 12 hours, and I was absolutely bushed by the end of it. But yeah, it was a great experience. So I'll go on now to talk about another adventure that I've been having over the past few years with 3 good friends who are all keen fell runners, and I think have all done lectures for you before. And so there's Johnny Morgan, Ez Trezida, and Finlay Wild. And really the idea was, I think it was Ez and Johnny came up with the idea. I think Johnny had always wanted to ski across the length of the Alps, with the starting point being here in Menton. This is the Alpine Arc here, and all the way to Vienna. And Ez was with a growing family, 3 children, really struggling to get time away to race in the Alps. We were all united by this love of fell running and ski mountaineering, and doing ski mountaineering races on very lightweight kit. And so this idea was born that the 4 of us would each year go back to the Alps, and with no outside mechanical assistance, try to make our way from Menton to Vienna. And this has meant that we've ended up finishing and starting in some quite tricky to get to places, because we never know quite where we're going to get to, and how we're going to get back from there, which really all adds to the excitement. It's taken me years really to get into ski mountaineering and find people to go away with. This was my trouble for a long time, despite being a dreadful skier to start with, because I didn't start till as an adult. But it's somehow, it feels like all the planets have aligned in a row, and this has been an adventure I've really relished for several years now. I think the first year was in 2016, and we started in Menton, which is right on the border between Italy and France, and the mountains go straight out of the Mediterranean from there. So we were immediately running out of Menton, and the first year we finished in a place called Aiguille, and the following year we managed to get to La Thuile, and after that was Sas-Almagel, and the last time we met for this, we got to Inner Ferrera. Last year, unfortunately, we couldn't do it because of COVID. This year we're planning, but who knows? I think it's looking a little unlikely. So here we are at the Mediterranean. I think this is 2016 was the first year. Got Ez on the left, Johnny, myself, and Finn. And it did feel quite bizarre to be there in our running shoes, palm trees, even in February. It was pretty warm. It was like 20 degrees. And I've just selected a few slides which just show the nature of what we were getting up to. This is actually during the first trip, and it was the second morning, and we went through some beautiful villages, and I've met some real characters along the route. And this guy is obviously fascinated with what we're up to and wanting to have a bit of a chat for these strangely dressed men in his hometown. This is just really to show that it's not all about whooping down steep slopes in deep powder. You never know what you're going to get in terms of weather, which has made a lot of the fun, really, planning on the hoof and having to change our route. And this day there'd been really heavy snow the previous 2 days, and it was just too dangerous to go through the mountains, so we had to walk about 30k along this road over the Col de l'Arche, and we were out all day. It went dark on us, as it often did. You know, we often start early in the morning and finish in the dark, and we're traveling very light. Our backpacks aren't all that heavy. They're probably 7 or 8 kilos. You can see Johnny and Finn there have got their running shoes on, but poor Ez, to go even lighter, had ditched his running shoes because he thought that we wouldn't have to walk that year, and he's in his ski boots, which must have not been fun, but he didn't complain. And this is just really to show the sort of obstacles we come across. There was very deep snow, this amusing little snow bridge that we had to get across, and I think this day we finished at about 10 at night at a refuge, having skied amazing powder in the dark, which is a real life-enhancing experience. Great camaraderie. And yeah, it's as again not always great powder, and here we are attempting to ski down the side of the road just to go a little bit quicker, and lots of fun, lots of laughs. Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite days of the trip. It was from Col de l'Arche to a place called Malgicet, and we went over about 4 successive cols similar to this. Not a track in sight, and lush powder to ski, and really fun times. You clearly, in the Alps, you have to get up early because that sun's hot and it melts the snow, and it can be dangerous. And as Johnny often says, you never regret getting up too early, and we got up very early that day and didn't regret it at all. And yeah, this is I think nearly everyone's veggie or vegan now who's on the trip, but anyway, it often has to go by the wayside in the Alps, or else you won't get much to eat. But yeah, this is a day where we've obviously finished fairly early, and are making the most of the Alpine hospitality, and good times, fun times with friends. And yeah, this last photo really just depicts some of the fun and the good times that we've had on the journey, and Johnny enjoying some great powder snow. So brings me on to the final trip that I was going to chat about this evening. There were a couple of things that prompted me to do this. It was I've done quite a few trips to Norway over the years, and I was in a hut in Norway about 14, 15 years ago in the Jotunheim, and I was reading through the hut book, and there was a guy called Ario Scioluri, Italian mountain guide, and he had skied the length of Norway twice, and he just put in the hut book that he was completing Norge Pa Langs, and I didn't know what it was, and I googled it, and when I got back home, discovered he'd skied the length of Norway, which I was absolutely fascinated by, and thought that's something I'd really love to do. And it just got under my skin. It was just played on my mind. And then another good friend did it a couple of years ago, and she said, you'd better hurry up and do it, or else global warming will mean that you can't do it. So it was a bit of a kick up the backside to me. And I also read a book by a lady called Audrey Sutherland, who's she died in her 90s about 5 years ago, but check out her books. Amazing sea kayaker, and between the ages of 60 and 80, she did a trip a year, pretty exciting. And her mantra was go simple, go solo, go now. And I just thought, you know what? If I don't go and do this thing, I'm never going to do it. So it was a year gone last September. I asked work if I could have 4 or 5 months off to complete this challenge. And amazingly, they said yes. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, hell, I've got to organize this thing now. I've actually got to do it. And I was pretty nervous about it. I really wanted to go with a buddy. But it's so tricky in life for such a big challenge to find somebody who's got the right aspirations at the right time. And it was clearly I was going to have to do it on my own. And I was pretty nervous about that, being in Arctic wilderness on my own. But the next challenge was maps, and I was very lucky. Finn's dad, Roger, had planned to do it, and he's done many trips to Norway, and he actually had got a set of maps to do it, and very kindly lent me his maps. And he'd done a lot of preparation as well, which was immensely helpful. It gave me a lot of GPS locations, which I did use. So another great motivation for me was a good buddy, Dave Hollinger, who I met at university. He was a schoolboy international orienteer, and when he got to university, he discovered rock climbing, and he fell in love with it, and he made his life around rock climbing and mountaineering, and he became a UI AGM guide, and very sadly had a brainstem stroke in a freak ski accident with his family not so long ago, and he's had this awful brainstem stroke. So friends have rallied round to try and raise a bit of money for Dave, because he needs a lot of support and help. So I thought, well, I'll try and use this as a fundraiser. So I also had a bit of time pressure on me, because I also wanted to meet the guys for Speedy Tours, which you've just seen about, which was the 8th of April. So I thought I would start as early as possible. And that probably meant starting too early, really. I started around Christmas time, and Norway can have fickle winters, and I got pretty unlucky, because in the first 2 or 3 weeks you cover a lot of very large lakes, and they weren't frozen. And this meant I had to do some detours, and had a bit of excitement along the way, as you'll see. For those that don't know, the length of Norway has this incredible system of backcountry huts, DNT cabins, and they're fantastic places to stay. And you can see the route I followed pretty much goes up and then across here, the Hardangervidda, the Jotunheim, and then up the border between Norway and Sweden, following as closely as you can to these backcountry cabins, which are usually unwardened, but you have a key to get into them. And a little bit across Finland, and then back in Norway to Nordkapp up at the top there. So what I've done for this is, rather than photos, I've put together some video footage that I took along the way. It's about 20 minutes long, so sit back and enjoy. And at the end of the 20 minutes, we'll have a little bit more chat. Okay, cheers.
So here we are, Lindesnes Lighthouse, just arrived. They're going to start this crazy adventure tomorrow on Christmas Eve. It's 4:10 and yeah, pretty emotional moment to finally be here after all the prep last few months. And yeah, gonna pop the tent just down here somewhere. And so just on the first day here, been like having really painful boot problems. It's really weird. It's like around my ankle, around my shin, around the sides of my shin. And I've just hacked a whole bunch of sponge out of the boots. I don't know whether that's helped, but now I'm just ripping off these devices that are, I think, the sort of stabilization devices, but hey, you don't need to do that. Oh man,
It's
jeez.
okay.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, this really kind man here has come and met me on the trail on Christmas Day, and he's produced this amazing box of goodies. The bus driver who took me to the Lindesnes Lighthouse, so thanks very much. Cool.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Forecast to be really pretty cold tonight, so tent's pretty wet. Unfortunately, it got wet on the first night down at Lindesnes Lighthouse, and not great. Zips were icing up last night, sleeping bag getting pretty wet. Feet are pretty sore. I've used up all my ibuprofen and all my paracetamol and didn't put any more in the resupply boxes. I thought, I won't need those. Who needs those? You never use them. Anyway, it's a beautiful day. Sun's dipping down. It's about 2:45. So yeah, third day today in ski boots. It hasn't been the greatest idea, it works out. Who would have ever thought it would be to walk 120k in ski boots? What was I thinking? Anyway, feet are really sore. I think that one's going to smart a bit tomorrow when I'm walking. I'll chop up some Compeed now and see if we can make something fit and try and cheer it up a little bit. So it's the fourth day today, hit the snow, about 2k back. I'm moving much better because host lady stopped and saw me and said, did she want me to carry some of the contents of my bag? What a star, oh yeah. So hopefully, although I've hit a bit of snow, it's going to improve a bit because this is definitely a bit marginal for skiing on. So, not great at all, just left Gaukai Hutter, gone through a snow bridge, absolutely soaked. Back at Gaukai Hutter here after having fallen in the stream back there, pretty soaked. Fortunately I only went up to just above my knees, sort of mid-thigh, but yeah, I knew it was not great in the Setesdal Hills at the moment, and I think that's it. I think I have to head out the hills now and resort to going up the road. So I'm on my way out from Gaukai and just had to cross a river. It's a pretty big river, and when I got to what was thought the bridge, it turned out to be 2 bits of wire. There's no way I was going to get across them. Anyway, found a snow bridge and I was pretty scared trying to cross it. You can see it's It's not ideal. Anyway, got through it.
There's nobody around because the weather's so bad, everyone's disappeared. So really tricky conditions. It's been incredibly windy. It has snowed now, but before it was really warm. There's loads of snow in the hills, but it was above freezing. Snow bridges were collapsing. The quality of the ice on the lakes was dubious, but biggest problem now is the wind. And pretty much every day there's forecast winds up to 23, 25 meters per second, which is getting on for storm force 10. I mean, it's not possible to be up in the mountains in those conditions and actually move. So really hoping things are going to settle down pretty soon. If they don't, I'm really going to have a radical think about this journey. There's only so long I can sit tight. I might well have to think in terms of breaking trail and returning back when hopefully things have cooled down and the winter storms have subsided a bit. That wasn't the original plan. I wanted to do this in a one. Fingers crossed for tomorrow. I'm gonna have to have a pretty early start because although there's snow on the road and it's been actually great moving along it today, it's due to rain by 11, which is pretty gutting. But anyway, time for bed. Tomorrow's another day.
Well, probably not my finest hour as I ski up the side of the road with not much snow at all to Haukelisetta. I'm really hoping this is going to be my last day of doing this sort of thing with hardly any snow for this trip. If I'm skiing on any more roads, let's hope it's pretty deep.
So here we are in Helvasvu, and the storm is raging outside, and unfortunately I need the toilet, so I have to venture outside and go and see what it's like.
It rained pretty heavily last night, unbelievably. I mean, it's even like -20 here, so as a result, the door is like heavily iced. So at last, some decent weather, hooray! I think it's only for one day, but I'm gonna make the most of it.
It's a Skelterbu cabin, and I arrived here 2 days ago in beautiful weather, and then yesterday was a really big storm. It snowed a lot and was very windy, and it means I've got to go a really long way round to get to Finse to be safe. Avalanche risk. There are some quicker ways, but they're steeper. Also discovered at Finse that the DNT cabin is closed at the moment, and most people who do Norge Pa Langs this time of year stay at the hotel, and as luck would have it, it's shut for 4 days. So I'm probably gonna have to snowhole in Finse. I was thinking of setting off today, but it was really hard to tell exactly how good the weather was going to be, and Finse's right next to the Hardanger-Jökullen ice cap, and for the second half of the day I would have had the wind funneled from Finse in my face, and a lot of fresh snow. I just thought it was too much of a risk to take. Could have been a very difficult day, if not worse. I just think it's a very exposed place here. Finse's notorious for bad weather at the junction of the Hardangervidda and the Skarvheim plateau. So played it safe. It was very windy this morning. Probably got about an hour's daylight left now. The wind has just dropped and the sun has come out, so it's glorious. Yeah, another bit of a tricky one was that the huts are officially shut beyond Finse. So I've been spending a bit of time trying to work out whether I can actually stay in the cabins beyond there or not.
Well, this really is the crazy trail breaking day. You can see I'm like sinking halfway up my calves. every step I take. 3 hours daylight left, I think about 14k to go. It's going to have been a long day. I've been very slow. Well, it's really reassuring to know that the sky is still blue. I was actually beginning to wonder. I really haven't seen the sky for quite a few days. It's just been a complete whiteout. Still pretty windy, but it's on my back, which is a good thing. For once, the wind is my friend. Bit of an issue here. I need to get down through all of that, and yeah, it looks like a fight. Yeah, not quite sure what I'm going to do. Arctic wilderness and then some upland farming. Beautiful. So I did get over the ridge. It wasn't too windy until I got the other side, and then it was savage. Lost my thermos flask, had to take my skis off, had to walk. I don't know how strong the wind was, but storm force wind, probably pretty unwise to have done it. Anyway, I've just got out of the wind and following some pylons down to the valley, and yeah, pretty traumatized really. Coming up the hill just here, and the bindings come off. Unbelievable luck. And this kind man has offered to help me. Unbelievable. And geez, we've got the right workshop. Well, that's quite an adventure just crossing that bridge. Never mind it being 7 at night, and got to cross Borgfjell tomorrow. Pretty snowed up. Amazing. And descend down to that lake down there next. And looking back to Lonster, where I've come from this morning, and then where I came from yesterday. Up above Gradisfelstø, amazing landscape here. Pretty awesome. So I've just left Trygvabu cabin, and I'm heading up quite a deep, narrow, steep-sided valley up in the distance here, and past a really old cabin, Argalad. It's about 20k up this valley, so yeah, should be interesting. There is some running water, need to be a bit aware of. Anyway, the farmer I spoke to last night said stick to the valley bottom, so I'll use local knowledge. Checking out this very cool little DNT cabin here. Got a little wee kitchen. And, really sweet little room with a stove, table and chairs, and then 4 little wee beds. Very, very cool indeed. Yeah, nice. And check that for a hut position. Awesome. Yeah. That's minus 21, I think, on the thermometer. Just leaving the awesome Sorasjus Hutter. What a place. Check it out. What a day. Oh man. Absolutely stunning. That's where I came down last night. Oh man. Pretty cold this morning. Yeah. So I'm just at the Swedish Sorasjus Hutter. I've got the Sarek Massif behind me. Sun is shining. There's barely any wind. Utterly amazing. And now down this valley, down here. Pretty exciting. Been ratcheting around various cabins looking for one that's open. So bit of relief to see this sign just here. Vinterroppenstuga. I think that's game on. Not so sure about this one. Don't think there's anyone here to operate the sauna.
cabin here in Areslocta. Yesterday I only came 12k, set off in fairly windy, but it seemed like it was reducing, and it wasn't. And it turns out in the valley it was like 20 meters per second, and up there I don't know what it was, 24, 25. It was really horrendous. Got a wee bit of lurgy, not feeling great, and I think that really was a bit of a nail in the coffin. So went to bed really early last night. Got up this morning feeling pretty pants, and have got some antibiotics. I think it's viral, but anyway, I'm ill. I'm in the arse end of nowhere, and I need to get well. Sort of just got enough food. So I'm gonna go to bed for another couple of hours. If I feel a bit better, I might go over the coal. There's another hut in 12k, so it's like super close. But they've got to put in some big days, or else won't get to Nordkapp. It still must be another sort of 750 kilometers to get there, and I think I'm gonna have to average 28, 29 kilometers a day. Hopefully I can put in some much bigger days, and so it won't be a problem.
Leaving Areslocta, and there's a traditional Sami gamma. Feeling pretty dreadful actually, been going for 5 minutes. Oh man, oh well. So that'll be. So I'm out on Skidoo Highway in near Kebnekaise, near Kunstland. Not many skidoos though, pretty exposed, pretty windy. Those are the signs. Bit of a moonscape out there really. See the signs spreading off in the distance. And here's my ski. I'm supposed to be zipping along this trail, but all this wet snow, the balling up's horrendous. Probably weighs about 2 kilos now, and yeah, I can assure you it's not reducing the friction. Oh man, whatever next. Maybe it won't be a 40k day today. Names in Hauke Jarostugona.
It was great to meet Ben last night. Came through at about 8 o'clock in a gale, snow everywhere, and he's still got another month to go.
Happy days. Yuka Sarastugan. There's also some other guys just setting off with the hulks just here, getting all set up. But it's a beautiful day. It's a bit chilly, but yeah, looking forward. Really. I've heard that in Norway they take down quite a few of the bridges in winter and put them back up again in summer, and I can see why now, because this is a bridge, and basically it's over a river. You can't really believe it, but there is a river here in summer, and with the weight of snow it's collapsed, and yeah, looks in a pretty sorry state of affairs now. Just arrived here at Gaskahutte, and these guys are like servicing the cabins, and so they're going on to my next hut. They're going to be putting a trail in, and they've taken all my food for me, so it's going to be a joy to ski with a light pack. So see you later guys. Awesome. And yeah, there's Gressvasshutte, and now into the storm. Yeah, it's supposed to abate for a few hours, so I'm gonna go whilst the going's good. Just leaving the Gressvasshutte behind, but sadly not the storm, and then quite a bit of tricky wee slope to get up just here, quite steep given all the snow we've had. There's the lake, and yeah, just got to go over this little wee col now. Hopefully not too steep the other side, because it's going to be totally loaded with snow from this this storm which has been blowing for 24 hours at least. Trying to get to the hut here. My God, never been so happy to see a hut in all my life. Absolutely mental weather here. Can't get the food because it's buried under the snow, so they had to go and rescue them. And then day 2, Jotkavari, turning out to be pretty tricky. White out now, it's been blizzarding quite a bit, pretty deep snow. It's been a headwind most of the way, so not really what I need after 5 days of full-on lurgy and feeling pretty weak. So been out for 8.5 hours now, or is it 9.5? No, maybe 9.5 hours, and still 7k to go. So yeah, tough day. Keep going, head down. So I decided to have a tent camp above Stabbursdalen this evening. It's a beautiful evening, and yeah, it's getting a bit tired, so just thought, let's have a tent camp. Pretty lush evening for it. It's going to be cold tonight. Here's the shepherd's cabin, and basically needs totally digging out. That's the roof of it just there. So I'm going to be pretty busy digging for quite a long time. Jeez. So here I am, just arriving at Nordkapp. Pretty emotional moment really, I guess. 3.5 months of skiing. It's tested me mentally and physically, probably. It must be the toughest thing I've done. It's been really tough. I think mainly the weather, just the storms and the deep snow. It's made it, you know, some really tough days out there. So amazing to finally to be here, and yeah, now to ski out. There's a blizzard coming in, you can see. But yeah, here we are, Nordkapp. Wow. Awesome. Yeah, so that's the little wee film, and just really to say that it did push me very hard, and I had 2 episodes of being unwell. One you saw there was for 2 days, and then another time I was stuck in a cabin for 5 days, and I thought I had flu, but actually when I got home, I got home not too bad, even though COVID had broken out. I drove home and it wasn't too much of a hassle, but it was really odd. The minute I got home, I felt really ill, and I went to bed, and I barely got out of bed for 3 or 4 weeks, and ended up having 5 or 6 months off work, with either chronic fatigue, ME, or post-traumatic stress. I really don't know, but it was very strange. I couldn't concentrate. I became very forgetful. I couldn't listen to music. I would need to sleep during the day. I went to the doctors. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. I found some online help for people with chronic fatigue, and it was extremely helpful. I think really what had happened was that because the weather was so severe this winter, and numerous people told me on route that they'd never seen so many storms, and it snowed so much, so it was so slow, was that all my days were really long, because I always had to make a hut, and I often went out in weather that was maybe a little bit suboptimal. So
I never relaxed, and I think I lost my spark at times, because it became really hard work, and it took me a long time to actually look back on it favourably, because there'd been so many traumatic and harrowing experiences in storms along the way. I'm glad to say I'm much better now, and I have to be a little bit careful what I do, but I have a lot of energy now, and I'm able to get out and exercise most days. I think possibly diet wasn't great, not a lot of vitamin D, not a lot of sunshine, yeah, and being a bit under time pressure, and I don't know, it's hard to know, but yeah, it took a lot out of me, but I hope you've enjoyed sharing my adventures with me. It's certainly been really fun for me to reflect on them, and put together that little wee film. Cheers.
Ben, that's absolutely amazing video. Thank you so much. And that sounds properly hardcore. And yet your video, you come across as quite sort of you know, as coping with it admirably. I think much better than most of us would do in the circumstances. And I guess it doesn't surprise me that you might finish something like that being pretty wasted. Has that affected you, how you sort of view life now, and what you do and what you don't do?
Yeah, I think I'm much more aware of looking after myself. I've always looked after myself physically, but mentally I've just sort of pushed on and put up with hardships, and I've learned maybe to be a little bit kinder to myself, and reflect a little bit more, and not push myself so hard, and yeah, relax a bit more, and that's been really helpful. Yeah. So yeah, definitely a bit of a different outlook on things now. It's certainly it wasn't quite the adventure I thought it was going to be, and in a way I had other people's schedules who had done it before, and it was a bit tough because I was constantly falling behind schedule because of the weather, but still an amazing journey, and so many incredible memories to think back on. Another thing I should mention was, because the weather was so poor, I didn't see anybody in the mountains for the first 2.5 months, and that'd be quite unusual to not at least see people in cabins at the weekend, but I didn't see anybody. And then it came to Easter, and around the time that I met James, maybe about 3 or 4 days before, I'd seen a few people, and for about a week afterwards I saw quite a few people. And then of course COVID hit, and again there was nobody around, and any time I hit a road and could possibly stay in accommodation, they were often shut as well, so a little bit of added stress with that as well.
Wow,
but
wow.
Yeah,
sounds like a properly Arctic journey. So look, I just wanted to open this out. So if there's a couple of questions on the chat already, and if anybody else, so I'll ask those, and then if anybody else has got questions, either jump in when I finish these 2 questions, or you know, off mute, or stick something in the chat window. So the next 2 questions, Ben, from Keith Burns in Carnethy. I think he's talking about your skis, but he said, how did you manage with waxing?
Yeah, so I did use waxing. It was generally okay. I did have skis that I could put little skins in the middle of as well. Some days it was a real pain. My biggest problem was that quite often it was warmer than it should have been in the first month, and so it was very difficult to get anything to work because it was really wet snow, which is very challenging. But yeah, it was waxes I went for, or skins. I unfortunately didn't discover glide wax for the tip and tails until near the end of my trip, which is a bit of an error really, but if anyone ever goes out there, get a little tube of some glide wax, and I didn't even think of using that, but yeah, it was a bit of a godsend the last few days.
Fantastic. Okay, another question from Ken and then one from Ez. Second one from Ken, what was your pack weight?
So empty or without food, my pack was about 14 kilos, and fully laden I was up to about 21. So it wasn't too horrendous, but to be fair, it was always heavier than I wanted it to be. And yeah, there's a big dilemma with this trip, whether to go for a backpack or a sledge. People who use sledges generally, from what I've heard, I've never used one, but you have to use skins, so you're generally a bit slower, and they can be a bit of a pain when you're descending because they have a bit of a mind of their own. I went with the backpack, but the other issue is, do you take a tent or not? I could have gone with a bivvy bag, and I did try for a couple of weeks with a bivvy bag, but I got somebody to post me my tent out because I just felt quite exposed without it. But yeah, about 15 to 21 kilos.
Wow, wow. I don't know, I meant to say Keith if I said Ken accidentally. It's Keith. A question from Ez. Great Ben, have you had a COVID test? Could it have been COVID turned into long COVID?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one. And coincidentally, on the 4th of February, I stayed in a place called Meroca, and stayed in a little guest house where coincidentally the Chinese cross-country ski team were staying. And at the time, COVID was news, but not really big news, and I didn't think anything much of it, and actually I didn't get ill for quite a while afterwards. So yeah, to cut a long story short, I did get a COVID test with the antibody test as soon as it came out, and it was negative. It is a possibility, but also the second time when I was really ill, I did have phone reception, and I chatted on the phone to Johnny a bit, Johnny Morgan, who's a doctor, and we were pretty certain it wasn't COVID. So I don't think it was COVID, but could have been some sort of post-viral fatigue.
Okay. Next question from Claire Weller. Claire, welcome to the call. Ben, what next? Just so I know, is the question.
I haven't really got any big plans at the moment, to be fair. The big focus since the trip has really just been to get healthy again, and it's made me really appreciate my health. And so yeah, really I'm just really working towards getting back to tip-top form really, and yeah, I guess just waiting for COVID to come to an end.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair enough. A question from Mark. It's interesting that you talk of PTSD. Did you fear for yourself in the storms, or did you just see it as a mission to get to the next hut?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. No, I didn't really fear for myself in the storms. It was really, it was just really a mission to get to the next hut. And whilst, I think in retrospect, it was more harrowing thinking about the storms, but actually at the time, it was really just keep your head down and just crack on. And I didn't feel that scared at the time, but it was always good to get to the hut. I did have to use my GPS quite a few times to locate a hut in a storm, and without that, I'm not sure I'd have had such a happy outcome to the trip, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't think that's cheating to use a GPS like that.
No.
Any other questions from anybody to either come off mute or stick something in the chat window? Okay, and Ben, you mentioned in passing your connection with Dave Hollinger, who had his very, very sad accident. I just wanted to repeat again to everybody on the call, all 55 people, it would be great for those of you that are in a position to make a donation please do so. I've put the link in the chat window, and it's for anybody that's got the email invite with these call details. It should also be in there as well. Another question just snuck in from James and Jane Hall. Would you go back and do it again, perhaps in stages?
Yeah, possibly in stages. I don't think I'd want to do it in a oneer again. I did before I set off have the idea of doing it in summer as well, and doing it in the opposite direction from Nordkapp south. But I believe there are huge expanses of boggy areas where they get really bad midges and bitey things, and I don't know how well I'd cope with that in summer. But I think if I went back to do it in stages, maybe it'd be good to do it with various buddies. I'm not sure I'd want to do it again in a oneer unless the weather was significantly better. Yeah.
Understandable.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Martin, by all means, please.
Yeah, Ben, what did you do about sending food on to different stages of the route? And what sort of food were you carrying and eating overnight?
Yeah. So yeah, I had to put a lot of thought into this before I set off. I worked out places where I would cross a road and rang up the hotels or guest houses or post offices beforehand, and got agreement that they would be able to store something for me for a period of time. And there is a bit of a problem sometimes if they have something at the post office for more than a month, they send it back again, which obviously I didn't want to happen. So yeah, I worked out about 10 places to send food to, where hopefully I think my longest crossing was maybe 10 to 12 days food. But to be fair, I often underestimated how much food I would need, and if there was anything left in the cabins, would generally, the further north I got, be ratching through the cabins for extra little bits of food. So the food I put in there was I had porridge for breakfast. I had Eat Natural bars for lunch, because they very kindly gave me several hundred bars.
Can you still eat them, Ben?
That's a good question that I maybe shouldn't answer. I haven't bought one since. Yeah, I maybe they're good, but I maybe had one too many of them. I put in also a few little treats, maybe some bars of chocolate and some peanut butter, some beef jerky, but they would generally get eaten up very quickly in the first few days after I'd got the resupply box. And then for an evening meal, I had some Expedition Foods, a company based in Hull with a sort of orange packing, and they were really tasty, actually. They were really good, and they're about 1,000 calories. So that was generally what was in the boxes. I also rather naughtily put cans of gas in. This is a big debate between people who do this trip, or similar trips. Do you put gas in or not? Because it's illegal to put the gas in, but could be difficult to get along route, and if you need it, you obviously up shit creek if you haven't got it. So yeah, there's a bit of gas in there. I had my maps in there, and that caused me a lot of stress before the trip to make sure I definitely got the right maps in the right boxes, because, you know, obviously making a muddle of that, you'd be in trouble as well. Funnily enough, a couple of places I sent it to beforehand, they said, yes, no problem, but does it matter if the box gets cold? It's like, no, it doesn't matter if it gets cold. But generally I didn't have quite enough food, and whenever I went past a shop, I would buy huge quantities, and I did get quite skinny towards the end, and I would buy these huge 2 kilo blocks of cheese, and I'd have cheese with everything, including in my porridge. I did have quite high cholesterol when I finished, which it was either the stress or the diet.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got I think maybe 4 more questions. So from Mike Lynch, what was the best food treat you found in a cabin?
Ooh, what was the best food treat I found in a cabin? Yeah, there were some good ones. Oh, I'll tell you without a doubt, the best food treat I found in a cabin was after 2.5 months. I did go to a hut where there were 2 other people staying there, and they were 2 guys, local guys in their 60s, and they every year went together for what they called a hunting trip. But as far as I could see, they'd just taken in bulks with huge quantities of food, wine, and whiskey. And I'd only been there for an hour or 2, and they were in a separate part of the hut, which was just for the hunters. And they knocked and said, "Do you want to join us for dinner?" And they had some, I think it was elk stroganoff that they'd made at home, and plied me with a glass of wine as well. And I think that was probably the best food experience. But in terms of random things finding, I mean, just to find a packet of dehydrated food and that was sometimes pretty tasty it all tasted wonderful to me.
Okay, next one, maybe not a question. Porridge, food of champions. I think that's an exclamation mark, not a question mark, so we'll skip that from Murdo. Next one from Tim Nicol. Did you ever think of giving up?
Yeah, no, I did think of giving up. I mean, partly it was just became such hard progress at times, like days that were maybe 17 kilometers that I should have finished at 2 in the afternoon. I was finishing at 7, 8 at night, and there were days when I was going downhill in deep wet snow, so I even had my skins on going downhill and was ploughing through this deep wet snow. So yeah, no, and then COVID hit as well, and it was a bit like, wow, is just should I just now throw the towel in? So yeah, no, there was a lot of that along the way, but I really wanted to do it in a oneer, and maybe it's a little bit of my downfall is that I am pretty stubborn and do like to see things through, and maybe I did just batter myself a little bit too hard with this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Maybe make this the last. Well, at the moment it's the last question, but if anybody's got one final question, then we'll include that. So this is from D Bard. Please, could you give a brief recap of your journey home after reaching Nordkap? Because that would have been a full lockdown, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, well, I finished at Nordkap, and I discovered an abandoned DNT cabin about 8 kilometers from Nordkap, and I made my way there, and I knew a storm was about to break, so I hunkered down for the night. And I must admit, it was an awful way to end the trip, because the cabin was really, really horrible. I mean, I've got pretty low standards, but it had been abandoned 3 or 4 years before, and it was pretty much derelict, and a pretty unpleasant way to spend the night. It had a huge hole in the floor that had a pane of glass over it that you had to be very careful not to tread on. And yeah, so I spent the night there, and there was an airport on Magaroya, the island where Nordkap is, and that was about 25k away. And I fortunately I had 4G there and figured out it was Easter, and if I didn't get a flight the next day, I was going to be stuck with all accommodation shut and all food shops shut for 5 days. So I got up at 4 in the morning and went out to the road expecting to hitch, and of course there'd been a storm all night and there were 4-foot snowdrifts. Anyway, I eventually got down to within 5k of the airport by 9 in the morning. Fortunately, a lot of it was downhill, and that had actually been ploughed that bit by then, and booked a flight at midday. Was really worried because I hadn't washed for 3 or 4 weeks, and I knew I'd be absolutely stinking. I was really worried how it's going to be on the aeroplane, the airport. Got into the airport, nobody there. Got on the airplane, I was the only passenger on the airplane. I took 4 flights to get back to Stavanger. Hardly anyone on the airplanes, and Eventually got back to Stavanger, didn't feel great. I stayed with friends there for a couple of nights, and then drove back. And actually that was relatively straightforward, because I had ferry tickets that I'd booked from Stavanger to the north of Denmark, and then from Rotterdam back to Hull. And all the border crossings, there were military police and armed personnel there, but as long as I had my tickets for the ferries to show them, they were content that I was just in transit and going home. So that bit wasn't too bad, but there was a bit of excitement getting from Nordkapp actually just to the airport. Yeah.
Wow. Ending your adventure with an adventure of its own.
It was indeed.
Okay, so the last question, and it comes from Kai Tresidder. How many cabins in total did you stay in?
Well, I'll have to get back to you on that one, Kai, because I was out for 106 nights, and I only camped on 5 or 6, and then there was a few other nights in hotels or so. So I'm going to stab a guess that I had about 80 cabin nights. But I have got a log of them, and I'll get back to you with that, Kai, but I'm not exactly sure, but probably 70-80 nights, I would guess.
Wow.
Great, thanks, Ben.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, look, Ben, that was an amazing talk, and I think hopefully just by the number of questions, that's probably a record for the most questions we've had at the end of a talk. So thank you very much. 3 contrasting and very inspiring stories, and very, very well done on all 3. So thank you again, and
That's been great. Thank you very much.
And we'll hopefully see everybody at the next talk in 2 weeks. And don't forget the charity donation as well, if you can afford it. Good. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice night.
Cheers, Ollie.
Cheers
Cheers, guys. Thanks, everyone.
See you, Ben.